48 hours, $12,000, one dying child, no one to call. Then at midnight, the phone rang. The hospital wouldn't wait. The insurance had failed, and nobody, not one person, had that kind of money to lend. It was December 2004. Chicago. The coldest winter in years. Her daughter had been in intensive care for 3 weeks. Pneumonia had turned into something worse. The machines beeped in rhythm with her shallow breathing. The fourth dripped clear fluid into her pale arm. The doctors moved quietly through the ward, their faces unreadable masks of professional calm. Every morning she sat in that same vinyl chair by the window, holding her daughter's small hand, whispering promises she didn't know how to keep. The girl's fingers felt cold. Too cold. The billing office had called twice that week. Polite, professional, firm. They needed payment. They needed it now. She'd begged for an extension, her voice breaking on the phone. They'd given her 2 more days. After that, they'd transfer her daughter to county care. She knew what that meant. Overcrowded wards where one nurse handled 20 patients. Understaffed hallways. No guarantees. The kind of place where people slipped through cracks. She tried everyone. Her sister, living 2 states away on disability, sent $200 she probably couldn't afford. A coworker started a collection at work. It raised $400 more, dropped into an envelope with signatures and hearts drawn in the margins. A neighbor brought groceries and $50 in cash, tucked inside a sympathy card with lilies on the front. She thanked them all, her throat tight. She cried in the parking lot where no one could see, bent over the steering wheel, her shoulders shaking. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. On the first night, she couldn't sleep. The motel room near the hospital smelled like disinfectant and old carpet. She sat in the hospital chapel instead, staring at the wooden cross on the wall, at the rows of empty pews. Dust floated in the dim light from the hallway. She didn't know what to pray for anymore. A miracle felt too big to ask, too impossible for someone like her. So she just sat there, silent, her hands folded in her lap, her heart too tired to hope. The silence pressed against her ears. The second day felt longer. Each hour dragged. She watched the clock on the wall, the second hand jerking forward in painful increments. She called old friends she hadn't spoken to in years, scrolling through contacts she'd almost forgotten. She left messages that went unanswered. Most didn't call back. The ones who did said they wished they could help, their voices full of genuine regret. She believed them. It didn't change anything. The numbers in her bank account stayed the same. $643. Not even close. By evening, she'd stopped counting hours. The weight of the deadline sat on her chest like something physical. She just sat beside her daughter, stroking her hair, soft, dark, tangled from weeks on the pillow, humming the lullabies she used to sing when she was small. The girl's breathing was shallow but steady. Her eyelids flickered beneath closed lids, caught in some dream the mother couldn't reach. She didn't wake. Then the phone call came. It was 10:30 at night. The hallway lights had been dimmed. Most visitors had gone home. The nurse at the front desk paged her to the billing office, her voice crackling through the intercom. Her stomach dropped. She thought they were going to tell her it was over, that the time was up, that they were moving her daughter in the morning, that she should pack the few belongings they'd accumulated, the stuffed bear, the coloring books, the photos taped to the wall. But when she walked into the office, the woman behind the desk looked confused, not angry, not cold, just confused. Her eyebrows were drawn together. She kept looking at her computer screen, then back at the mother, then back at the screen. She said someone had called an hour earlier, a private fund, anonymous. They'd covered the entire balance, $12,000 paid in full. The transaction had already cleared. The mother stood there, her mouth open, unable to form words. Her brain couldn't process it. She asked who it was, her voice barely a whisper. The woman shook her head slowly. She didn't know. The payment came through a third-party trust, handled by a law firm downtown. No name, no message, just a reference number and a note identifying the family in room 304. Nothing else. No explanation, no conditions. But then the woman hesitated. She pulled out a leather-bound ledger, the hospital's internal donor log. Her finger stopped on one line, 2 initials in black ink, MJ. She stared at it for a long moment, then closed the book without a word. She walked back to her daughter's room in a daze, her hand trailing along the cold wall to steady herself. Her legs felt weak, disconnected from her body. Her mind raced through possibilities, through names, through everyone she'd ever known. Who would do this? Who even knew the exact amount? She'd been so quiet about the debt, too proud to post it online where strangers could see her shame, too ashamed to tell anyone outside her closest circle. She sat down beside the bed and cried. Not the silent, choked kind of crying she'd been doing all week, swallowed down so the nurses wouldn't see. This was different. Relief, disbelief, gratitude so overwhelming it felt like drowning, like being pulled under by something too big to name. Her whole body shook with it. What she didn't know, someone had been listening. If you're moved by stories like this, subscribe. Did you know about his kindness? 3 days earlier, a man had visited the children's ward. He didn't announce himself. He wore a dark jacket, a fedora pulled low over his face, sunglasses even though it was evening and the sky outside was already purple with dusk. He moved quietly through the hallway, his footsteps soft, stopping at each room for a moment. He asked the nurses gentle questions. How long had the kids been there? Were the families managing? Did anyone need help they weren't asking for? One nurse thought it was strange. Another thought he was kind, the way he listened when she talked, nodding slowly. Nobody asked his name. Something about the way he carried himself suggested they shouldn't. He didn't offer it. When he reached room 304, he paused in the doorway. The mother was inside, asleep in the chair, her head tilted at an uncomfortable angle, her hand still holding her daughter's across the bed rail. The machines hummed. The girl's chest rose and fell. He stood there for a long moment, just watching. His hand rested on the doorframe. Then he walked away, his shoes squeaking faintly on the linoleum. 2 hours later, he called the hospital's billing office from an unlisted number. He said he wanted to cover a family's debt. He gave the room number. He asked them to keep it private, to not mention his involvement. They agreed. They always did. The next morning, the mother tried to find out who'd helped them. She asked every nurse on the floor, describing the call, the timing, the exact amount. She called the billing office again, was transferred 3 times, left on hold. She even checked with the hospital's donor relations department, a tired woman in a basement office surrounded by filing cabinets. Nobody could tell her anything, or maybe nobody would. Privacy policies, legal restrictions, donor requests. One nurse, an older woman who'd worked there for 20 years, pulled her aside in the hallway near the vending machines. She said she'd seen the man. Tall, quiet, moved like he didn't want to be noticed, keeping to the walls, avoiding the bright overhead lights. When he'd asked about the families, his voice had been soft, almost shy, gentle in a way that made you want to answer honestly. She said she'd heard that voice before, years ago, on the radio, on TV, in songs that had filled her teenage years. But she didn't say the name. She just smiled, a knowing, careful smile, and walked away, her keys jangling from her belt. The mother went home that night and sat at her kitchen table, staring at the hospital receipt under the yellow overhead light. It had the payment confirmation, the timestamp, the trust account code printed in small official letters, but no signature, no name, just numbers and abbreviations that meant nothing to her. The nurse looked at the name and froze. A week later, her daughter woke up. The fever broke during the night. The breathing improved, deepened. The doctors called it a turning point, standing at the foot of the bed with clipboards, nodding to each other. The mother called it a miracle. She didn't care what the medical term was, but she couldn't let it go. The question burned in her chest. She needed to know. She contacted the trust company listed on the receipt, found their address online, called their main line. They wouldn't give her a name. Privacy laws, they said, donor confidentiality, standard practice. She understood. She didn't push, but it hurt, not being able to say thank you. Then one afternoon, 3 weeks after her daughter came home, a package arrived at her door. Small, padded envelope, no return address, just her name written in careful block letters. Inside was a single white glove, not new, a little worn at the edges, the fabric soft from use, and tucked inside the glove was a small card, cream-colored, expensive paper, 2 words handwritten in black ink, encouraging her to keep going. She recognized the handwriting, not because she'd seen it before, but because she'd seen it everywhere, on autographs, on posters in her childhood bedroom, on album covers she'd owned as a teenager, played until the vinyl wore thin. She sat on her front step, holding the glove, her hands shaking. The afternoon sun was warm on her face. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't post it. She didn't try to prove it or get it verified. She just kept it, in a box, in her closet, where no one else would see, where it could stay hers. Her daughter recovered fully. They went home a month later. Life slowly returned to normal. School, work, groceries, ordinary days. But the mother never forgot. The weight of that gift sat quietly in her heart. Years later, she would understand what he'd done. She read the stories, the rumors, the whispers about the man who used to visit hospitals in disguise, slipping in through side doors, who paid medical bills in secret, covering debts for families he'd never met, who left gifts and disappeared before anyone could thank him, before cameras could find him. She didn't know if her story would ever be confirmed. She didn't need it to be. She knew. In the way you know certain truths without evidence, in the way kindness leaves a mark you can feel but not see. Because kindness like that doesn't need credit. It doesn't need recognition. It doesn't need witnesses or documentation. It just needs to be real, and it was. She kept the glove in a frame now, not on the wall, just on a shelf in her bedroom, beside a photo of her daughter graduating high school. A reminder, not of a celebrity, not of fame or fortune, but of the night someone saw her pain and decided to carry it for her. Someone who could have been anywhere, helping anyone, and chose them. Her daughter, now grown, asked about it once. The mother smiled and said it was a gift from a stranger. The girl didn't press. She didn't need to know the whole story. Not yet. But someday, maybe she would. Someday, maybe the mother would tell her about the man who came in the dark, who asked no questions, who left no name, who saved them when no one else could, who gave them a second chance without asking for anything in return. She never met him. She never got to say thank you. But every year, on the anniversary of the night the bill was paid, she lights a candle. She says a quiet prayer, and she remembers the gift that didn't need to be signed, the mercy that expected nothing back. Some acts of grace are never explained. They're just felt, carried forward, passed on in whispers and small gestures, and moments when someone decides that another person's pain matters more than their own name on a receipt, more than recognition, more than proof. She still wonders sometimes how he knew, how he found them in a city of millions, why he chose her family when there were so many others. But maybe those questions don't need answers. Maybe the mystery is part of the gift. Maybe not knowing keeps it pure. Because if kindness is loud, it becomes performance. But if it's silent, it becomes truth. And truth is what lasts. Truth is what changes you. Truth is what you carry forward, long after the moment has passed.